Yeah, and when is a cultivar ever evaluated? I would say never, because you take an old cultivar, came out in 1958, like Nova, Mandarin, and everybody thought it was mainstream commercial variety, and then we started putting nets over it and it gets alternaria brown spot. And that was an absolute disaster.
Tell us about the health aspect as best as you can.
I don't think I could tell it as well as Jamie told you guys.
We will link Jamie's podcast in.
We will.
But and for that reason, I'll leave him to give the specific antioxidants that we're talking about, the beta carotenoids, and there's some of them phytofluorine and fluorine, which are colorless carotenoid. Try and do that because we haven't got the product. And myself, even with the trial sites that I've got availability of fruit, to try and have one fruit every day is all it takes to change our health is extremely difficult.
Yes.
So we need to correct that. We need to ramp up the production, and only then will the consumer realize, hang on, this is something I need to be part of.
A random question here about that. Good afternoon, Jon. Good to have you with us.
Hi there. Nice to be here.
Yes, indeed. You're going to do the proper introduction?
Yeah, this is Jon Roberts from the Citrus Growers Association, the Cultivar Development Company.
That's right, yes. Citrus Growers Association, Cultivar Company.
There we go.
And
when we started, I did say to every single workshop and grower group that I spoke to in my first year that if they come up with a better name than that, there's a case of beers waiting. But I haven't had to buy that beer yet. But yes, that's who we are, CGACC.
Are you still looking for a new name?
Yes, I can see you heading that way. Yeah.
That's it's very exciting to know that the citrus industry has a particular company dedicated to cultivars. When were you formed, and what do you do?
Yeah, that's if you say the CGA, they think it's the governing body, which it is.
Correct.
And then how does the Cultivar company fit into CGA? Because
a lot of questions.
Yeah, CGA is the umbrella body, and
yeah, our sister company, River Bioscience and Exit, which is now RBX, started about 11 years before us, and we basically are the commercial companies belonging to the CGA. So CGA are our holding company, 100%. And it was largely out of a space that growers felt existed where industry needed to be involved in cultivar development. It was a very kind of fledgling time in terms of protected cultivars, management of cultivars, royalties, which were quite a shock to growers at that stage, because before that, all cultivars were free, open. Let's call them open source, freeware. And you could get cultivars that were mainstream, made you money in the old days. It was a lot simpler world back then, and I'm talking starting, let's go back to 1930s, all the way forward to about 1980. And that space was flagship cultivars like Washington Navel, Star Ruby grapefruit, lemons, and then the first easy peelers were coming onto the market. But my grandfather would have been considering whether to plant oranges or lemons. And the orange, being in a cool area like the Eastern Cape, would have been Washington Navel. No other decisions to make. And now the current farmer is faced with any number of oranges. They're probably about 30 on the books, and likewise with mandarins, probably even more. Valencias, about the same. number, and they all do different things. They seedless or earlier or later. They pink, they orange. And you need to understand that the calculation of this thing that you're putting in the ground for 45 years, let's say you're a good farmer, your management's good, there's no reason why an orchard shouldn't last for 45 years, unless the market dictates they no longer want that, that variety. So there was a big space in the market for new varieties when the first easy peelers came in. And I think universities and plant breeding programs were getting pinched by governments. The source of funding for breeding new varieties was drying up, and they now had to find income of their own to drive their breeding projects. And that, one thing led to the other. So you had varieties like Nadorkot, originally known as Afura. It was one of the first varieties to be protected that we knew of in South Africa, and very successfully came to the front, one of the top mandarins that we know today, and still is. And I think it'll remain for quite some time, and there are various derivatives of it. So you've got the low seed and etc. But it was a big shock for growers, coming back to what I said at the outset, is they now had to pay a royalty, and there were restrictions on where they could get the trees from. They might have to get it from the owner of the variety, and there were restrictions of who you could market with. That certainly was in the berry space, in the blueberry space. So very controlled and a lot of restrictions. And I think growers were concerned that this might come their way and it might be unfettered. So I think the space was there for them to have a company that didn't replace the private cultivar companies, but gave opportunity to owners that wanted their variety to be managed by an industry company for reasonable returns, profits to them, and the growers to try and find that match between reasonable royalty structures. So that's the mandate. You have to understand that certain discoverers or owners, breeders, have certain expectations predetermined, and we can't control that. So if they want a variety royalty deposit and say production royalty going into the future, that is their decision. We can guide them, and we certainly know what's toxic to growers. And they don't like being held to production royalties for the rest of time. A variety plant breeder's right lasts 25 years, so that's just about the life of your tree. So the idea was to, the more competition you have. When we started, I think there were 2 companies, ourselves and Citragold.
Yes.
And then Citrus Genesis arrived, excellent citrus, Granberry. So, and I think that's very good. It certainly brought a calmness to the industry, and I think generally all the players are now forced to be reasonable in terms of their requirements in royalty structures and who where you get your trees from and who you market. That kind of thing has reduced, definitely.
So the old open varieties, what happened to them? Are they still there? Was people still planting them? And how does that work?
Interesting question you ask there, because one of the mandates, and I never knew what it meant when I first, and my interviewing panel also didn't know what it meant really, was that I'd be a spokesman for the citrus industry. And I was wondering, how could I be a variety management company and be a spokesman, because I couldn't be talking about other companies' varieties.
Yes.
That's their business, and I've got no part in their business and reason to do that. But I quite quickly found out there was a variety called Yassi Valencia.
Okay.
Probably the last open variety in the industry. It was donated by somebody up in the north with the same name of that estate, and it was a variety that clearly performed as well, if not better, than a lot of the protected cultivars. I won't call them bred cultivars, but mutation varieties that we know today. And I saw various trial sites of it, and then I saw some semi-commercial orchards, and it was year in, year out for over 3 years, incredibly productive, very good size. And I asked the evaluators in the industry, the CRI does free, objective, scientifically based evaluation of varieties. And that's very good that we've got this independent watchdog, that your varieties have to stand up to this measure of theirs. And I asked him, why was this variety languishing and not being planted? And he said, well, they effectively, all you guys, you commercial guys, are punting your varieties. We put up the data, but growers need to be advertised and told about and whatever. And I realized that that was what that mandate, that part of the mandate, well, I made it, that the meaning of that mandate was to talk about that cultivar. Although it gave us no financial return, that is very important part that I don't think there was anything available to farmers to hear about the open cultivars. So the old open cultivars were, I named a couple just now, Washington Navel, mutation from a Valencia in Brazil in turn of the 1900s. My great-grandfather planted one of the first ones that came over from Bahia province on one tree on a ship from Brazil, brought over by an American friend of his. And then you have Eureka lemon, has been the powerhouse of lemons. Before that, you had other Fino lemons and the European family of lemons, Lisbon, and Eureka came out as a standout of them. You had Star Ruby grapefruit. All of these are open varieties, open source, and they're still there. Seedless mutations of lemons have come up, but they're really pretenders to. The market is still driven by Eureka, and everybody said at a certain stage the market's going to get so oversupplied that people will eventually become more discerning and only want seedless lemons, because Jamie Oliver said you should have them in your kitchen. And it's never really kind of moved to a premium paying product. And it doesn't bear as well as Eureka. So growers are continuing with old varieties like that, and they still probably are, in terms of lemons, the open lemons drive the plantings today.
I have a question, and I might be putting you on the spot a little, but see if you can go there. Do you have any stats as to what percentage of citrus, or even like lemon or mandarin or whatever, are being planted to new varieties versus the open varieties? Do you have a thumbsuck amount there, maybe?
Yeah, so you made me scared there for a moment when you said stats, but it is something I have followed. So from about 2003-04, we were trundling along at about 3 million buds supplied to the industry, to the nursery industry, to make trees.
Is that per year?
Per year.
Okay.
And there were two booms at the same time, the late mandarin boom and the lemon boom, more or less the same time, and that drove us up to about 2016, 17, I'd say about 7, I think we peaked at about 7 million buds. And of that, at that time, it was virtually neck and neck. Became 50% from the old days, 2003, 4. It was still vastly the open variety, open source varieties that drove the plantings. But then it increased, I think, about 2017, 2018. The protected varieties came into the ascendancy. We do have the stats. They're all recorded in our CGA stats books, and those go back to 2011 and back from the time of Justin. And then, it's now probably, I'd say, about 60-40.
Okay.
We came off that boom, and we've crashed down to about 2.8 million. And the nursery industry are struggling. I think the cultivar industries like us as well are struggling because, it's sharing a very small pot now. We probably need to get back to about 3 million, and I think we see that happening now because we're entering a new boom period with, you've probably been listening to the news around shorting of supply of
Juice.
Orange juice. And those previous lakes of orange juice that existed in the old days, pre-HLB and climate change droughts in Brazil and etc., they've disappeared. COVID drank them up the first time, and then it was basically only the supply of juice in that current year that was making up the demand overseas. So this year, after last year's steep incline in prices, Valencias have been off the clock.
Yes.
Just before starting to talk to you guys, I was speaking to the Foundation Block. I don't know if you know them. They supply all the budwood, and they were in a absolute panic about huge orders we've just received for some of our cultivars, and how we would be able to, we'd have to allocate a little bit to everybody because we just can't supply, and that's in Valencias. But of the 2.8 million, we'll probably end up in about 3 million this year buds released. I would say nearly 80% has gone to Valencias this year. Whereas the mandarins, lemons, grapefruit have remained pretty static.
Was that 80 or 18%?
80.
Checking.
Just looking at what we've released, yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
But that's strange. Okay, yes. I would imagine that everybody would want to get a piece of the pie and this amazing juice price that's just happened. But it's going to be 3 years still before those trees are bearing.
Yeah.
When the trees exist.
so-
when the trees exist.
Oh, yes.
So
But
the bud, it's still plus, 3 years plus.
4 to 5 years then.
So if you run it back a bit, they were talking about those previous booms. Lemons were probably far more riskier than where we are in this orange juice boom, and the varieties that supply that are required for orange juice, which are Valencias. Lemons was just a hiatus. There were, for certain reasons, a sudden shortage, freeze in Argentina, which up until that time were vastly bigger than South Africa or any of the other lemon producers. And so they coughed, and we all kind of filled the market for only about 2 or 3 years.
Yes.
But growers nevertheless climbed into it, even though you say it takes 3 years to produce that fruit. So that was quite a risky boom. The growers who had lemons in the ground did extremely well, and the first few lemons that came through, 3-year-old lemons, maybe 4-year-old lemons, benefited from that. Whereas the Nadorkots was a more prolonged boom, in that it's the old kind of driving on the highway test. They call peeling a banana while you're driving on the highway test in America, or the Autobahn in Germany, and whether you can peel an easy peeler while you're driving at 100 miles in a Mercedes down the Autobahn.
That's an interesting test.
Yeah, so it's what the modern generations, year after year, want everything a lot more easier to open and peel and drink and eat. So easy peelers have eaten into oranges, and they continue to cannibalize into that. So I think that's been a long and sustained. We don't know when it's going to have eaten all its way into the oranges that are required. I think there's always going to be a demand for oranges into the future, but we don't know what that level is. But it's certainly 2011 when I started this company. Oranges, once again, you can go dig into the stats, but I seem to remember something like mandarins were 8%, they're now 26%. So the pie graph has just changed completely. And navels haven't gone down quite to 11%, but they're down to about 16%, where they were 24% back in 2011.
Okay.
So it's just completely shifted around. And I think they'll probably continue a little bit more and probably go down to about 15% navels. They also they're problematic for farmers. They're quite difficult to produce and get the same kind of cartons per hectare that you can get out of a Valencia. It's very highly productive. And then, if I can go back to one of the things you said, why orange juice coming from Valencias? So Valencias are very low in a compound called limonin. They probably normally about 2 to 4% ppm, parts per million, whereas navels are kind of 6 to 8. And most populations can take limonin. Let me say why limonin. Limonin causes the bitter effect in juice.
Okay.
So you squeeze a navel and you put it in the fridge. You don't quite finish the jug. Tomorrow, what's that? It doesn't taste nice, and you throw it out.
So does it happen with
And some people can
oxidation?
tolerate it more than others. So the tolerance level for population is normally between 3 to 6 parts per million. Anything above 6 going to too bitter. So navels carry that, and mandarins, and that's purely why they don't go into juice. Or they do go into juice last year because Brazil was so short. The world couldn't get what they needed. And so you can blend to a certain extent before you start getting too high in limonin.
Yes.
And that's opened up a whole new game as well. We're finding varieties that were previously thought of as being navels, and therefore they are not to be put into juice at too high a level because they've got limonin. And we're now finding on certain rootstocks, certain of our pink navels that don't have those limonin levels. So before it was a blanket approach.
So
R&D,
isn't that amazing? So research and checking it out.
Finding little gaps and possibilities that, and I'm saying this is cutting edge. This is happening right now. So we only discovered it very, very soon after we had our talk down in Stellenbosch with you guys.
My goodness.
I just happened to see a graph that had a very low limonin content.
Just by accident?
From our Spanish colleagues, and I asked them to run the tests again, and they did, and it was low. And it started kind of little
get the gears
light bulb
Okay.
flickered there, and now we're looking into it. So there's certain things like maturity as it gets later in the season. Its limonin goes down to 2.
Okay, so you were talking about this limonin. What's it called? Limonin. So it's basically the higher level of limonin, which has to date kept all navels or most navels out of juice.
Correct.
But suddenly you have found navels which have lower limonin levels, which could actually go into the juice into the juicing system. So that's quite a breakthrough.
Yeah, lower
Correct,
limonin
yeah.
levels is a tongue twister.
It is indeed a tongue twister.
You don't. I suppose new innovation doesn't happen until there's a bit of chaos, and as our friend in America right now, and this is a chaos of the industry just couldn't get the juice, and then you start looking around. But why can't you take navels? No, because it's got limonin blanket. It's just a bad boy.
It's the way we've always done it.
Yeah,
it's
that's
one of
how
those.
we've done it.
It's the first
And
time
then-
I've heard of
Yes.
that issue.
And when I saw that table, that graph that had the low liminin, the researchers hadn't noticed the significance of that. And I've just got this various compounds in my mind that I'm worried about, and I'd like to know what levels they are in certain cultivars, and that we're not selling a variety that has got too much of something like that. I just saw, no, that can't be right. It's a navel, that blanket approach. Navel's in the bad box. And then they did it again, and it was lower, and it was even lower. Then they worked out they ran it over a season. The beginning of the season, it was high. And slowly, as they came to the time that they pick it, it was low enough to go into not mainstream juice. And some of the pink varieties were even lower than Valencia's. So, you don't find those things until you have to. And we tend to put things into boxes. So you need to
Yes.
think out of the box. And a massive shortage like that produced that, I suppose.
And the researchers were they didn't have that in the back of their mind looking for the lower liminin. They're not, they're doing the data. They're not looking
they're
at
looking
that.
at so many things and
Yes.
so many compounds. And you heard that talk, all the different compounds and what they're doing in terms of antioxidants and whatever. I mean, we have the same with grapefruit. If you're taking statins, you shouldn't have a grapefruit at the same time you're just taking your statin. The uptake is just too quick into your body, so the rest of the day you're exposed with no statin in your system, in your bloodstream. So that in grapefruit is a compound called furanocoumarin. And we've got plant breeders in Florida University. The prof was saying they've got no industry left, but they've got some of the best researchers in the world. Fred Gemitter and Jude Grosser. And they bred a hybrid of a star ruby grapefruit for sweetness and to try and appeal to the younger people.
Yes.
Because grapefruit are eaten by the old people.
Yes.
And you've also heard today that the old people are becoming less as well.
Can I interrupt you there for 1 second?
Yes.
We've got grapefruit and then we've got pomelos.
Yeah.
Is there a difference?
Okay, yes, very much. So this variety they bred for sweetness is, I think it came out of Hirado pomelo from Japan, which they crossed with a star red grapefruit. And it's a hybrid, therefore, of the two, pomelo and grapefruit. It definitely is sweeter, lovely eating, still has the flavor of grapefruit, not quite as acid, a little bit bigger, which is a problem
it
for the
pink?
market, but it's about one size bigger than a grapefruit. They like to get as many fruit
Yeah.
in the box.
Yeah, it's about the packing numbers in the box.
Yeah. So anyway,
Sorry, has
what
it
they-
got a pink color like star
Oh, yeah,
ruby? Okay.
yeah. Very pretty to look at, but it stumped them. They found it's just near undetectable levels of furanocoumarin, which suddenly gave the argument that it could be safe. So you've got a sweet grapefruit that younger people might be attracted to because of its lovely tropical flavor, and it's now safe. And many of the older people who love grapefruits are more likely to be on statins. So it frees up a lot of the market and might make a grapefruit come back into fashion, whereas it's slowly eroding. If you look at the stats, they're setting a little bit less. It's flatlining at the moment, the uptake into EU and Japan.
Yeah. John, I think we are speaking to you about the Cultivar company. Tell us about your cultivars.
Yeah, so we started off in 2011, October, with 0 cultivars, which was quite challenging, as you can imagine.
Yes, with a name like that, yes.
We could have got the Yassi in.
Yeah, so, well, it's part of the mandate, so I was very active in talking about that and open varieties as well. But we found ways to get into the industry and penetrate, and I think a lot of growers gave us quite a lot of loyalty in terms of if they discovered a variety, that they would phone us as well, not just the other companies, and gave us a chance to pitch. And we found ourselves now, what are we, 2025, starting 2011 with about 64 varieties.
Wow.
And then you have a very low hit rate of what would move on to become acceptable in the market and commercially viable. It has to produce, it has to be productive, easy to grow.
Travel.
But the market also has to like it has to travel, must take cold steri. A whole bunch of things get thrown at it. And and when is a cultivar ever evaluated? I would say never, because you take an old cultivar, came out in 1958, like Nova, Mandarin, and everybody thought it was mainstream commercial variety, and then we started putting nets over it and gets alternaria brown spot. And that was an absolute disaster. So you never stop evaluating as climate change happens as well. Varieties start getting affected. So anyway, coming back to the Cultivar company, we've probably now at the stage where we have the top 3 Valencias bud sales in terms of bud sales, and we've got probably about 50% of the oranges, the pink oranges, navels I'm talking about. We've probably got about 70% of them, 80%, and mandarins, we've got a way to go, but we've got a lot of new ones coming in, and we're not focusing at all on the late mandarin area. That's very well taken care of. Again and again, I hear from people, if you could have an Adorcot that's early producing, it's a long ask in terms of DNA, but that would satisfy the market. It is the most beautiful thing to look at on the shelf. It tastes good and it peels well while you're driving at 100 miles an hour on the Autobahn. So yeah, what we've looked at is we focused on the early part of the season, and seedlessness and all the same things must comply and must be heavy bearing. So that's where we're at this stage. We've got a bunch of exciting things coming out there. Got the earliest clementine that now is picked at the same time as Satsuma. In the past, you had to have a month of Satsuma mandarins and then get into clementine. So we're now picking this year the first Clemensoon, it's called, by a Spanish company.
Clemensoon.
Yeah.
Like that.
Clemensoon, yeah.
Yeah.
I suppose a very literal way of coming soon, arriving soon.
And you, the Cultivar company, is simply managing those varieties. You are not breeding.
Yeah, so we have certain varieties. Sometimes a grower will ask us to just buy them out, which we have done. That's not our main focus. I think it's to discover, evaluate, and if it passes those tests, then clean it up for commercial sale to the market, to growers, on behalf of the owner. For that, we have a management fee, and that's what our job is, to provide access on reasonable terms to the industry.
And then these varieties that you guys manage, you obviously keep a very close record system of how many buds has gone out to who has planted, where they've planted, what rootstocks, all those things.
That's all part of the license agreement that a grower enters into, a sub-license with us. We're the licensee for the owner of the variety. And Yeah, they have to comply, and that's in terms of GPS. Where is the orchard? What rootstock's on? So all that information is
And then also
recorded
on the returns?
and captured. No, so only in the case of some varieties, some of the very high kind of premium paying varieties, will you have a system like that where there's a share in the production cost, so 2 or 3% FOB, free on board return of the carton, would go to the owner and management company. But generally with oranges, it's a once-off royalty up front.
Okay.
When we met you last year, it was to do with the pink oranges.
Yes.
And that absolutely fascinated us. The growing of a new category, really, which the really exciting thing about it, yes, it tastes nice and it looks good, but what it does for your health, that is absolutely fascinating. Maybe you should just tell a little bit more about that.
My history with pink oranges is I am not an orange eating fan. It was always a mission to peel. It especially when you get that white rind on the outside of the orange, it's bitter and
It doesn't work for the Autobahn
yes,
test.
yeah, definitely not. I really didn't enjoy eating oranges. And then we were on a project in Limpopo, and they took us to an orchard where they were harvesting caracaras. And at that stage, I've not had a caracara. And I ate it out of the bin. And it was like a life-changing moment for oranges for me. It was incredible. So since then, the only oranges I buy for my house has been caracaras. And then last year, we go to help you with your presentation on pink oranges, and we sit there with our minds blown.
Yeah, yeah. It's something that we really need to get the consumer to understand, and I think Jamie, his real name would be pronounced Jaime, but Jamie is doing, and his father are doing incredibly good work. Yeah, you met Carlos as well, who's heavily involved. So we were bumbling along with caracaras for many years, and a consumer would walk into a shop and see caracara on the shelf, and it looked exactly the same as a Washington navel, and there was no distinction that they could find, other than maybe if they were promoting it and they would cut some fruit, and normally the consumer would go and eat those ones, and then you don't see them anymore.
Sorry, just to interrupt you. Are you managing, is caracara an open variety?
Caracara is an open variety, yeah.
So
back when it first came out, I remember as a young man I was advocating this thing being grown. But yeah, it just never really took off. There was one place in the world that it did take off, and that is in California. And somehow they got the message across to the consumer. Okay. And then the consumer started, when they saw caracara, they knew. And what this new bunch of mutations that we've discovered, they've been there for a long time. But we just weren't really looking for them, I suppose. Oranges are orange. Why do you say pink? And so farmers who normally discover these things, they weren't looking for it. And then the first ones that started coming through, the red Lina for us, and then the Molar Red, it was originally called Valentine, but there's another Valentine Pomelo. Okay. So we had to change that to Molar Red. They are pink on the outside, beautifully pink. Not quite like Star Ruby, but you can see there's parts of the rind that are definitely, the oil cells are pink. Even the albedo that you said, the white rind that you don't like, which is very healthy for you, by the way. But anyway, you should eat it.
Yeah. It's like medicine. If it tastes bad, it's probably good for you.
Yeah. So it's got stripes of pink in it. So it's very visible to the consumer. It's definitely about 4 shades darker in the bin or in the carton for when the consumer sees it. So that new crop of varieties, Biogold have Kirkwood Red. So we've got quite a nice range now. What's significant as well is that the red Lina comes out 4 months earlier than Cara.
Oh, wow.
Now Cara's in the center of the season, and you've got Molar Red and Kirkwood
4
going to
months
the later
earlier.
part of the season. Yeah.
So
4 weeks, sorry.
Oh,
4
well,
weeks,
I was
sorry.
about to say.
4 months would be the other side of the hemisphere.
yeah,
So-
that would be in line with lemons.
Absolutely. So I'm glad you corrected me there. 4 weeks. So we can basically spread it this side,
Yeah.
southern hemisphere, for the full season. And if growers in the north are growing it, which Carlos's company, they've got about 200 hectares in the ground now already and selling. If we can get up to about 1,000 hectares this side and 1,000 hectares that side, then we're going to get far more brand awareness. Then it'll be exponential. And once we have the clinical trials coming through, written up as proof of all the preliminary information we heard there, which is Loctite. It's we know it's good science. And when you look at the health aspect as well, it's going to be a game changer.
Tell us about the health aspect as best as you can.
Well, I don't think I could tell it as well as Jamie told you guys.
We
at
will
the
link Jamie's
symposium.
podcast in.
We will.
But and for that reason, I'll leave him to give the specific antioxidants that we're talking about, the beta carotenoids, and there's some of them phytofluorine and fluorine, which are colorless carotenoids. Which that's where it's not even in the pink. The pink just says, okay, I'm different. Eat me, and the pink part, it's got carotenoids in it, but the lycopene, and it's quite a small amount of the makeup of the fruit. The fluorine and phytofluorine are the two real game changers. And as Jamie told you, they probably, of any other food stuff they've come across, they never found that level of fluorine and phytofluorine.
Sure.
And that appears to be where the real results are happening. And they've got a bunch of clinical trials going on in Spain that are starting to show that in terms of treating obesity, funnily enough, the star ruby grapefruit, if you didn't have that statin problem and you just ate a grapefruit every day, you will lose weight. It's a proven, scientifically proven fact. But then you have the problem but it's got furanocoumarin in, and
That is the
so you
issue
don't
with
get
the
uptake.
statins, yeah.
And it's also very difficult to get this the story across because we don't have enough of the fruit in the market. You go out today and try and have one red lycopene fruit is what that clinical trial is doing. They gave a kid one fruit a day. That's all they did. And they found significant changes in their health. And I'll leave him to say what those changes were. But try and do that because we haven't got the product. And myself, even with the trial sites that I've got availability of fruit, to try and have one fruit every day is all it takes to change our health is extremely difficult.
Yes.
So we need to correct that. We need to ramp up the production, and only then will the consumer realize, hang on, this is something I need to be part of.
A random question here about that. On a general Cara block, let's say per hectare, what is the pack-out percentage on that normally versus what you want in the boxes and what could be considered for either for processing or juicing or something like that?
It's tough. Navels are tough, and Cara seems to be particularly prone to thrips.
Okay.
So blemish.
So they might also see the health benefit in the thing.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but you'll hear farmers spraying quite a lot more to control things like that. Some of the other cultivars have mealybug infestations. So you're doing well if you can get up to about 2,200 cartons a hectare. Whereas at midnight in the sweet spot area like Carino, Nelspruit, Bombella, you'll be getting about 3.5 to over 4,000 cartons a hectare. So you know, they're not probably getting quite the premium return of the navel, but certainly they're making up for it in production and far more profitable.
And are these kind of stats similar to the other varieties that the other pink varieties that you've also got?
Yes, yeah, pretty much, and that's and pretty much the same as normal navels.
And why I'm asking that is because if there's a demand in juice and your pack out percentages for your premium export fruit is not that good, you might have a good supply of juice from those trees.
Yeah,
Am I correct in saying that?
Yes. So in fact, this last year, one of the things that navels are prone to is a thing called creasing. The rind starts getting like little creases in it, and that means that if it's packed in a 15 kg box, so the fruit at the bottom can often crack, pop.
Okay.
So not good for traveling, and the pack houses grade very harshly on creasing, and it was a very bad creasing year in the Eastern Cape on navels, and that would have been extended into some of the pinks. Not that we've got many pinks at this stage, but it is a weakness in navels. And luckily there was a juice shortage this year, and so all those fruit went into juice factories, and growers got paid pretty well. So it came at a very good time for navel growers. But navels are definitely harder to get good production, good packouts, because of being slightly more technical fruit to grow.
Okay. I'm thinking particularly in because that what's the tongue twister word that you were talking about? The
Limonin?
Limonin. Limonin is lower in those things, in those varieties. Plus, you've got potentially more processed fruit in your basket that it could, in going forward, be a good juice potential for those growers.
That's exactly the light that started flashing.
Yes.
It gives the grower an added benefit in their returns. If that bears out, we need to do the research first.
But another angle on that could be, because it is so healthy that, and you could juice it, it could be used in South Africa more.
So you'll see a slide that Jamie showed there of the pulp.
Yes.
And the levels of fluine and phytofluine in that pulp was absolutely incredible, staggering. And as an additive into feed products, even pharmaceutical products, the pulp byproduct of that, like they would do with lemon in processing lemons for lemon juice. The more valuable thing in lemons currently is actually the oil,
From the
lemon oils from the skin. And we have another variety from Florida, 3 varieties that actually produce double the amount of, just off by the by, double the amount of lemon oil in lemons that we're trialing at the moment. That Coca-Cola is very interested in, because they need it. And
they
now
need a lot of
Florida's
lemon
gone,
oil.
and they
Is
still
that
need
is
the
that
lemon
one of
oil.
the secret ingredients?
It is actually lemon oil.
The
No,
Coca-Cola.
not the secret ingredients that we're not allowed to know about.
No,
Yeah.
but
It clearly is, because on a hot day with a block of ice and a slice of lemon, it's just got this wonderful cola.
Yeah,
but there's a lemon, something that's smoggling with your mind there.
John, we kind of need to look at getting to the end of our chat.
Yeah.
When you looked into the future for the Cultivar company, what plans do you have? What visions do you have? What are you looking at?
So we're at a time now that I was thinking at about 4 o'clock at one of the nights that to an extent I've created a monster. We've created a monster, but I did start off pretty much like Justin, one man and fax machine, and now we're a small team, and we need to very fast grow now to make good on all these varieties, because somebody asked me, Rob Elphick from River Bioscience said, what do you need now? I said 4 processors and a very good technical manager to get around the country, and I also need a very good marketing man. We need to get going in terms of admin and processing and making good on what we've got, because we've got some good stuff out there, and I've got some very hardworking staff at the moment, and I need to upskill and increase and give them more tools to do the job.
Well, that's good luck with that. We have a closing tradition, and Dewald will take over from me.
Yeah, that the previous guy gives a question for the next guy.
So the previous person that we spoke to date, we happen to have a linear thing, but sometimes it's you don't know who the next person would be, and they leave a question, a completely random question for the next person. So it's just like, let's see where we go with this.
Do you think personal relaxation are getting more important in a world where technology is so impressive?
Okay, that's quite a thought-provoking one. Absolutely. I think you just need to unclutter your mind. If you look at the barrage of information that we have, and my wife knows when this little eye starts flickering, and that's around about then that I'm going to be. I know I'm going to find myself in Botswana, in the Kalahari, or the Kruger Park somewhere. Justin's love of birds, Justin Chadwick. I have a similar passion, and it just takes you away. I think we definitely have to do that, and I'm so concerned about our next generation and my grandchildren. This the screen just takes up so much of our lives, and I think we need to see the nature. And it's very concerning to see one of the slides with sustainability talk there, that our wildlife is down to about 2% of the biomass of mammals right now. The vast majority is made up of our household domestic animals and ourselves.
Food for humans.
So we need to get out and look after our dwindling wild areas. And we have a project, my wife and I, we wilding our garden. And there's some
I do the same with my
books.
lawn every now and again.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think it's, and over that time of about 30 years of wilding, we never had eagles, but we have a African crowned eagle now nesting for the 4th year in a row in our garden.
Wow, that is cool.
We have, I remember seeing one of the camps in the Kruger Park, they said, and we have a resident pair of paradise flycatchers. We've got 7 pairs.
Wow.
So we've just seen an influx as we've wilded our garden, and make your home a wild area as well.
Wow.
That's wonderful, and it's really good that you can actually live that and do that. And I think your answer is something that more of us should do. We should try and spend more time away from screens and just communing with nature and protecting it. So, Jon, thank you so much for joining us.
It was fascinating.
And the very best of luck with your endeavors. It's very exciting. The industry needs what you're doing a lot. And good luck, and we'll touch base with you again.
Thank you very much.